The modern world tells you aging means retreat. Nonsense. Most men are inhabiting psychological territories that accelerate their decline, homes that corrupt your spirit. You see it everywhere. The vacant eyes, the hunched shoulders. Your generation deserves better. These four mental habitations I'm about to describe, they're killing your potential. When you get older, never visit these four homes isn't just advice, it's a map back to meaning. The choice is stark. Continue deteriorating or reclaim your territory. It's entirely on you. The most dangerous territory that men over 65 begin to inhabit isn't a physical space. It's psychological. It's a territory I call the home of self-pity. I've seen it transform strong men into shadows. When you cross that threshold, you've already begun to die. I remember speaking with a former executive, let's call him Richard. Brilliant career, respected leader. 2 years after retirement, I barely recognized him. Hunched posture, vacant expression, constant complaints about his health, his children who never visit, and how the world has gone to hell. He built himself a mansion of self-pity and locked himself inside. Self-pity isn't just an emotion, it's an addiction. The neurochemistry is fascinating. When you indulge in feelings of victimhood, your brain releases small amounts of dopamine. Not enough to make you feel good, but enough to make the behavior addictive. It's precisely why it's so dangerous for men your age. The brain becomes dependent on the neurological pattern of complaint and validation. Carl Jung understood this phenomenon deeply. He recognized that the shadows we refuse to integrate don't disappear, they grow stronger in our unconscious. Your complaints about aching joints, ungrateful children, or changing times aren't random expressions of discomfort. They're manifestations of a deeper existential crisis, the unwillingness to confront your own mortality and irrelevance. Look at the men around you who've fallen into this trap. They speak in cycles, repeating the same grievances. Their facial muscles form permanent downward expressions. Their bodies literally curl inward, protecting the wounded ego from further injury. It's a physical manifestation of psychological retreat. Now let's talk about breaking free from this home. It starts with radical responsibility. Every time you feel the urge to complain, ask yourself, what am I avoiding by focusing on this problem? The answer is usually growth or acceptance. The discomfort you're experiencing isn't a sign to retreat, it's a call to adapt. James, a 72-year-old former engineer, noticed his tendency towards self-pity after his wife's death. Instead of succumbing, he established a daily ritual. Each morning he wrote down 3 challenges he faced, followed by 1 concrete action he could take on each, not to solve them completely, but to move forward. Within 6 months he'd started volunteering, reconnected with estranged friends, and begun learning Italian. The biochemistry shifted. Instead of seeking the weak dopamine hit of self-pity, his brain began producing it through achievement and connection. The neural pathways of victimhood weakened, while those of agency strengthened. This isn't positive thinking, it's biological reality. Your nervous system at 65 plus is still capable of remarkable adaptation, but it requires deliberate action against the gravitational pull of self-pity. It demands you recognize the dignity in struggle rather than the comfort in complaint. So when I say never visit the home of self-pity, I'm not offering platitudes about staying positive. I'm telling you that this particular psychological territory will literally reconstruct your neural architecture toward decay. It will accelerate cognitive decline and physical deterioration. The men I respect most in their 70s and 80s haven't had easier lives than their peers. They've simply refused to make self-pity their dwelling place. They acknowledge pain without making it their identity. They face limitations as puzzles to solve rather than sentences to endure. You stand at a threshold now. The home of self-pity keeps its door unlocked, offering the false comfort of blame and resignation. But step away from that door. Your remaining years, which could be many, deserve a more dignified habitat. One built on the foundation of responsibility rather than the quicksand of victimhood. The second dangerous territory that destroys the potential of men over 65 is what I call the home of nostalgia. It's not just reminiscing about better days. It's a psychological prison where you become a permanent resident of the past. I sat with a former military officer last year, combat veteran, decorated leader. 6 decades of remarkable life experience. But all he could talk about was 1978, the year of his greatest achievement. The war stories, the camaraderie, the clarity of purpose. His eyes would light up describing events from nearly 5 decades ago, then dim when conversation shifted to the present. He wasn't just remembering the past, he was living there. Nostalgia has a neurobiological function. When the present becomes threatening or unpleasant, your brain seeks refuge in memories where your identity felt secure. The hippocampus, responsible for memory formation, works alongside the amygdala, which processes emotion. Together they create an addictive loop of retreat into idealized versions of your history. The philosopher Kierkegaard understood this phenomenon profoundly. He distinguished between recollection and repetition. Recollection looks backward, while repetition courageously faces forward. Most men your age are stuck in recollection, mistaking their memories for their identity. This is catastrophic for psychological development. Watch men trapped in nostalgia. They speak of the past with a precision that's almost artistic, yet struggle to tell you what they did last Tuesday. Their homes become museums to bygone eras. The same stories emerge at every gathering, polished like stones from constant handling. This isn't memory, it's avoidance. Breaking free from the home of nostalgia requires deliberate practice. Start by time-boxing your reminiscence. 20 minutes daily to honor your memories, then return to the present. Document your history in a journal or recordings for your grandchildren, transforming nostalgia from escapism to legacy building. Harold, a 78-year-old former business owner, realized he spent hours daily scrolling through old photographs and telling anyone who would listen about the good old days. He instituted a rule: for every hour spent with memories, he would spend 2 engaged in something new. He joined a pottery class. Terrible at first, his hands shook, the clay collapsed. But the novelty rewired neural pathways that nostalgia had frozen. The neurochemistry shifted. Instead of seeking the serotonin comfort of familiar memories, his brain began producing dopamine through novel experiences, creating new neural connections rather than reinforcing old ones. At 80, he's now teaching pottery to other seniors. This isn't about denying your history, it's about preventing it from becoming a tomb. Your most significant evolutionary advantage as a human is neuroplasticity, the ability to adapt, learn, and grow until your final breath. Excessive nostalgia calcifies these plastic capabilities. So when I say never visit the home of nostalgia, I'm not suggesting you abandon your memories. I'm warning against making them your primary residence. The past should be a place you visit occasionally for wisdom and perspective, not where you live permanently while the present passes you by. The men who age with dignity maintain balanced temporal awareness. They honor their history without being imprisoned by it. They extract lessons from their past to inform their future rather than using it as an escape from the now. You face a choice every morning: will today be spent primarily cultivating new experiences or reliving old ones? The neural architecture of your remaining years depends on that decision. Choose complexity and engagement over the comfortable retreat into what once was. The third psychological territory that corrodes the dignity of men over 65 is what I call the home of dependency. This isn't about needing occasional help. It's about surrendering your autonomy entirely, making yourself a perpetual child in the winter of your life. I encountered a retired judge, 70 years old, brilliant legal mind. For decades, he'd made decisions affecting thousands of lives. 2 years after retirement, his daughter was choosing his clothes, his meals, his daily schedule. Not because he couldn't, because he wouldn't. He'd moved into the home of dependency, surrendering the burden of choice for the comfort of being managed. The psychology here is insidious. After decades of responsibility, there's a seductive appeal to abdication. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for decision-making, experiences fatigue after sustained use. Retirement can trigger a dangerous relaxation of this cognitive muscle. Like physical muscles, neural pathways atrophy without regular exercise. Decision-making becomes increasingly difficult, creating a downward spiral of dependency. Erik Erikson's developmental theory identified the final crisis of human life as integrity versus despair. Integrity comes from maintaining autonomy until the end. Dependency by choice, not necessity, leads inevitably to despair. Your brain requires the stress of decision-making to maintain cognitive health. Observe men who've surrendered to dependency. Their posture becomes passive. Their eyes seek permission before action. Their language shifts from "I will" to "if they'll let me." The language of agency disappears, replaced by the vocabulary of permission. This isn't aging, it's surrender. Reclaiming independence begins with small daily acts of decision-making. Start with your morning routine. Make your own breakfast. choose your own clothes, plan your own day. These seemingly minor choices maintain the neural architecture of autonomy. Thomas, a 75-year-old widower, found himself increasingly deferring to his well-meaning daughter. She scheduled his appointments, managed his medications, even laid out his clothes. He instituted what he called Decision Thursdays, one day weekly where he made every choice no matter how small. He prepared his meals, arranged his transportation, chose activities. The anxiety was overwhelming at first, but diminished with practice. Within months, he'd reclaimed most of his daily autonomy. The neurochemistry transformed. His brain began producing norepinephrine through the stress of decision-making, strengthening neural pathways that dependency had weakened. Research shows these choices literally prevent cognitive decline. This doesn't mean rejecting help when truly needed. Interdependence is the mature response to aging, maintaining decision-making authority while accepting physical assistance. The distinction is crucial, accepting help with tasks versus surrendering the authority to decide. So when I say never visit the home of dependency, I'm advocating for what psychologists call selective optimization with compensation. Recognize your limitations, but defend your decision-making territory fiercely. The moment you surrender the right to choose, you've begun the process of psychological dissolution. The most dignified seniors maintain autonomy in hierarchy. They delegate tasks they can no longer perform efficiently while retaining authority over their lives' direction. Their relationships are partnerships, not parent-child dynamics. They say, "I'd appreciate your help with this," rather than "what should I do?" You stand before a critical threshold. Society expects, even encourages, your dependency. Marketing targets seniors with messages of helplessness. Well-meaning children infantilize their parents. Resist this with everything you have. Your cognitive health depends on maintaining the burden of choice. The fourth psychological territory that devastates senior men is what I call the home of digital isolation. This isn't about avoiding technology. It's about substituting digital connections for human ones, creating the illusion of engagement while deepening your isolation. I spoke with a retired professor, 83 years old, brilliant mind. He spent 8 hours daily online, Facebook groups, news sites, YouTube videos. He could tell you every detail of his grandchildren's lives from their social media, but hadn't physically seen them in 3 years. He'd constructed a digital simulacrum of relationship that allowed him to avoid the messy reality of human connection. The neuroscience here is alarming. Digital interaction provides just enough dopamine to satisfy the brain's social needs without the full neurological benefits of face-to-face contact. Studies demonstrate that physical presence, even silent presence, triggers neural synchronization between humans. This synchronization strengthens cognitive function and emotional regulation in ways that digital interaction cannot replicate. William James understood a century ago that attention determines experience. Your capacity for attention in your 70s and beyond is precious, perhaps your most valuable remaining resource. Every minute spent in digital spaces is attention diverted from physical reality. The damage isn't just social, it's neurological. Observe men trapped in digital isolation. They reference online relationships as primary connections. They speak of distant events with more emotion than local ones. Their physical environments often show signs of neglect while their digital avatars flourish. Their bodies slump into increasingly permanent C curves as they hunch over screens. Breaking free from digital isolation requires deliberate recalibration of your attention economy. Begin by tracking your technology use for 1 week. Most men are shocked to discover they spend 4 or 6 hours daily on devices. Then establish technology boundaries, specific times and purposes for digital engagement. Walter, a 71-year-old retired accountant, realized he checked his phone 87 times daily and spent nearly 5 hours online. He instituted what he called analog mornings, no technology before noon. Instead, he walked to a local cafe, engaged with the same group of regulars, and participated in community events. The withdrawal symptoms were intense initially: anxiety, phantom vibrations, FOMO, but within weeks his sleep improved, tremors in his hands diminished, and his posture straightened. The neurophysiology transformed. His brain began producing oxytocin through genuine human contact, rather than the pale dopamine surges of digital engagement. Research confirms that oxytocin production literally strengthens immune function in seniors. Technology addiction suppresses it. This isn't rejecting technology's benefits. Video calls with distant family, online learning, digital health tools, these serve valuable purposes. The distinction lies in using technology as a tool versus retreating into it as a primary habitat. So when I say never visit the home of digital isolation, I'm advocating for what sociologists call technology stewardship, mindful use of digital tools to enhance rather than replace human connection. The most vibrant seniors maintain technological competence without digital dependence. The men who age with dignity establish clear hierarchies of connection. Physical presence takes precedence over video calls, which outrank voice calls, which supersede text messages, which exceed social media interactions. They recognize that each step removed from physical presence diminishes the neurological benefits of human contact. You face a pivotal choice daily: will you invest your remaining attention in pixels or people? The digital world offers frictionless, consequence-free engagement. It never challenges your opinions, never notices your declining health, never asks difficult questions. But this very comfort accelerates your cognitive and social atrophy. The four homes we've explored, self-pity, nostalgia, dependency, and digital isolation, form a psychological prison for aging men. But there exists an alternative territory I call purposeful autonomy. This isn't wishful thinking, it's a deliberate reconstruction of your mental and physical environment to support dignity and meaning in your final decades. I witnessed a remarkable transformation in a 79-year-old former factory worker named Michael. After his wife's death, he'd inhabited all four dangerous territories, bitter about his health, living in memories, dependent on his children, isolated behind screens. His cognitive decline was visible, his joy non-existent. Then something shifted. He began reconstructing his psychological territory piece by piece. The psychology of territory is fundamental to human experience. Your external environment shapes your internal landscape. The rooms you inhabit, the people you encounter, the activities you engage in, these aren't just settings for your life. They actively create your cognitive architecture. The philosopher Heidegger called this dwelling, not just existing in spaces, but being shaped by them. Reconstructing your territory begins with physical space. Declutter aggressively. Each object in your environment demands attention, creating cognitive load. Simplify your surroundings to create mental bandwidth. Michael donated 2/3 of his possessions, transformed his living room into a workshop for wood carving, and established a reading corner with carefully selected books. Next, establish daily practices that build resilience. Begin each morning with physical movement, not extreme exercise, but deliberate activation of your muscular system. Michael started with 5 minutes of basic stretching, gradually increasing to 30 minutes of walking. The neurochemical cascade from physical movement quite literally reconstructs neural pathways damaged by apathy. Then create what psychologists call islands of competence, areas where you maintain or develop mastery. Choose one domain to preserve expertise and one to develop new skills. Michael maintained his mechanical knowledge by fixing neighbors' appliances while learning classical guitar, something he'd always wanted to pursue. Establish connection rituals that combat isolation. Schedule physical presence with others, not just digital contact. Michael joined a community garden and committed to weekly coffee with other veterans. The oxytocin produced through human contact strengthened his immune function and cognitive performance. Finally, construct frameworks of meaning beyond yourself. Find ways to serve others that utilize your specific experience and wisdom. The psychological benefits of contribution are well documented. Michael began teaching basic mechanics to disadvantaged youth, using lifetime skills to impact future generations. The transformation was remarkable. Within 18 months, his stooped posture straightened, his vocabulary expanded, his sleep improved. Medical tests showed enhanced immune function and cardiovascular health. His children reported getting their father back. He wasn't just surviving, he was flourishing. This isn't positive thinking, it's neuroplasticity in action. Your brain remains capable of remarkable adaptation throughout life. But this reconstruction requires deliberate effort against the gravitational pull of decline. It demands you recognize your responsibility not just to survive aging, but to demonstrate its potential dignity. So when I talk about constructing your new territory, I'm speaking about the most profound creative act available in your remaining years. You're building the cognitive, physical, and social architecture that will determine your experience until your final breath. The men I most respect in their 80s and 90s haven't avoided suffering or limitation. They've built territories that acknowledge reality while maintaining dignity. They face each constraint as a design challenge rather than a sentence. They say, given this limitation, how might I construct meaning? Rather than, because of this limitation, meaning is impossible. You stand at a critical threshold. Society has prepared a narrative of decline for you, a territory of diminishing relevance and joy. Reject it categorically. Begin today constructing a domain of purposeful autonomy. Your remaining years, which could be many, deserve architecture worthy of a dignified ending. The territory you choose to inhabit in your final decades isn't just a preference, it's a moral decision with profound consequences. These 4 homes, self-pity, nostalgia, dependency, and digital isolation, aren't just psychological states, they're active choices that accelerate your decline. Every morning you wake up and decide, will you retreat into comfortable dissolution or advance into meaningful engagement? The chaos that ensues from inhabiting these dangerous territories isn't just personal suffering, it's the squandering of wisdom that younger generations desperately need. Order emerges when you recognize that your remaining years aren't a waiting room for death, but a final opportunity to demonstrate the dignity of human potential under constraint. There is no neutral ground here. Every day you're either building resilience or surrendering to entropy. Ask yourself this: when death eventually comes for you, as it comes for us all, will it find you cowering in these 4 homes of retreat or standing in territory you've constructed with courage? The choice, as always, is yours alone to make.